All right. This one's a frustrating one. Jets lose to the Detroit Lions 17-20. The Jets are 7-7 at this point in time. This one's a frustrating one. Zach Wilson gets the start based on Mike White's inability to start based on his broken ribs. And this one's frustrating because I don't want to pin it on Zach Wilson. He had the bad interception, like brutally bad, but the defense did not bring their A game today. This was probably the worst performance by the defense. Specifically, C.J. Mosley had himself an awful game. I mean, you figure the last touchdown was a 50-yard touchdown because C.J. Mosley did not cover his guy. As much as I want to give Zach Wilson crap for a performance that I feel like is very like we're talking 50% completion percentage right now. Like this is what happens in Zach Wilson losses. Lost to the Patriots, 50% completion percentage. Lost to the Lions, just above it. Zach Wilson goes 18 of 35, 317 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And that sounds great. Like 300 yards sounds really good. The interception was an interception you cannot have. The defense, right now, played the worst game I've seen this defense play all season. This defense was a flop today. C.J. Mosley gave up a 50-yard touchdown on that last Lions possession. Zuerlein missed a 58-yard kick. If Zach Wilson gets us down the field just a little bit further, it's not an issue. Zuerlein missing a 58-yard kick, that's a long friggin' kick. He's an NFL kicker. He should make the kick at 58 yards. It's a long kick. Just sucks. I thought the Jets were going to have this game. I thought we were going to sneak by the skin of our teeth. That Uzama touchdown by Zach. Look, I don't think Zach had a bad game by any means. I think he had an okay game. But if you have an okay game against one of the league's worst pass defenses, that's not great. The Jets defense probably had their worst performance today. This was ugly from the defense. Like, as much as the punt return touchdown really hurt, I put that punt return touchdown on the defense squarely. Like, as much as people are going to say, oh, well, the defense only gave up, 3 points in the first half. No. They got him all the way down 99.5 yards, almost into the end zone. I should probably switch my my thumbnail over here. Sorry. My thumbnail is not great right now for the turnaround. I had stuff planned, and I flubbed it up. So let me switch that real quick. Let's get this flipped around. Bam. This was my hope for what was going to happen. Let's try that again. All right. Zach Wilson returns to action. The Jets wind up losing. And look, I'll be honest, it's not entirely because of Zach. The interception was brutal. The defense hurt. The defense gave up a huge first possession by the Lions. Got us all the way down to the half-yard line. Had a great fourth down stop, don't get me wrong. Fourth down stop, big time. Big time. But because the defense allowed them to get all the way down the field, the Jets had no room to punt. The Jets wind up punting and allowing a touchdown. Don't get me wrong, Brent Boyer deserves a ton of blame for that. But the defense allowed the Lions to go all the way down the field. Take it all the way down to the half-yard line. That's not on Zach. That's not on the offense. That is entirely on the defense, in my opinion. The Reptile Guy says, how can we root for this team going forward? It's tough, right? Like, you want to hope for victories and everything. The loss to the Lions, while it doesn't officially eliminate us, this is bad. This is a division. Sorry, not a division. This is a common opponent loss because the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Patriots play the NFC North. So the Jets lose another tiebreaker because of this loss. They lose another tiebreaker because of this loss. If you're looking at the rest of the games, you want to win the AFC games, and of the only 4 games that were remaining, the Seahawks game was the only one you could lose because none of our other division opponents were facing the Seahawks. Because you lost to the Lions, now you put yourself in an even worse tiebreaker situation than you were just 4 hours ago. This is bad. How do we root for this team moving forward? Look, you just hope. You hope for other teams to help us out. You root for the team. I'm rooting for Zach. I have no issues with Zach. You just got to do the things that we ask of him. The Art of Pimpin' says Lawson needs to go $15 million for getting owned. Nope. Done with him and his contract. Fire man as well. Lawson's gone after this year. The Jets drafted too well this past draft with Clemens, with JJ, with Huff, from a few years ago, and whoever they decide to bring in. Let's call it John Franklin Myers is one of the other guys. The Jets' defensive line is fine without Lawson. They will cut him at the end of the season. Man had himself not a great day as well. Brian Dolan says the D held the Lions to half of what they've been scoring lately. Would have been 34-10. Laughter. Is Zach Wilson set for 3 weeks to learn to not do exactly what he did on that interception? That interception was awful. That was not like maybe the safety isn't looking. Like, that is an awful interception by Zach Wilson. 300 whatever yards that he had, great. Awesome. Don't lose us the game. And I don't think he entirely lost us the game. I think this was more of a team loss than it was a Zach Wilson loss. I'll give it that. The defense on the first drive where they drove all the way down the field, took us to the half-yard line, they got the stop. Oh, that's great. But you got them 99.5 yards. Defense couldn't get any yardage. Punt return goes back for a touchdown. Punt return, that's an issue. The defense, bigger issue. Defense should not have allowed the team to go all the way down the field on us, and we shouldn't have been punting with a 10-yard punt as opposed to like a 15-yard, depth of punt. That's on the defense. I didn't think they looked sharp today by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't think Zach looked great. I didn't think he looked awful, though. I thought Zach looked fine. Soreless76 comes in, says, clock management by Salah is beyond awful. Quinnen better be asking for a nice pay raise when contract talks start. He makes our defense. We felt the loss of Quinnen Williams today. Our defense clearly looked subpar against the Lions offense, who has been overachieving, who's done a good job. The Lions aren't a bad team by any means. They're a team on the upswing. But this Jets defense is predicated based on our pressure, based on the front four. And Quinnen Williams not being out there was a huge detriment to this offense. So Quinnen Williams earned himself a few more bucks today. 100%. 100%. Quinnen, as far as Salah and his clock management, I don't think it's horrible. I think it's more of an issue of the defense than it was on Salah. But, yeah, not good. Look, CJ Mosley shouldn't be giving up a 50-yard touchdown. Point blank. Nicholas George the King comes in, says, this is not Zach's fault. He has some rusty moments, but made big boy throws as well. Similar numbers to that of Mike White, just missed a few throws. Yeah, I would say this game is not entirely on Zach Wilson. 100% not entirely on Zach Wilson. I would say the detriment of today's game might have been on the fact that the Lions didn't think we could pass the ball, and they stopped our run game. The Jets' run game today, our top rusher, 13 carries, 23 yards, Zonovan Knight, 1.8 yards a carry. Our best rusher on a yards per carry average was Michael Carter, 4 carries, 15 yards, 3.8 yards a carry. That's not going to get it done. The offensive line failed us again. I do think the Lions sold out against the run, and I think that's entirely why you see a lot of the issues we saw today, but I don't think it's solely the only one. Not great. Not great. Let's see. We got Brian Bogan. Brian Bogan says, chill, guys. We're 500 in December. Fuck off. Sorry, Brian. I love you, brother. But no, fuck all the way off. The Jets were in great position to make a playoff spot before the bye. And we done shit the bed. That's on Robert Saleh. That is on Zach Wilson. That is on the rest of this team. You can't have that sort of situation at this point in the season. And look, if I'm looking at a season overall, I'm saying we have done an above average job based on where the perception of this team was going to be in preseason. Based on where we were at the halfway point of the season, we have fucking failed. This team should have made the playoffs, and it should not have been a question. Being 500 in December at this point in the season is a failure. Now, talking about the whole season as a whole, being 500 at this point in the season, that's a halfway decent win. You have 3 games to get to 9 wins, and that's where I thought a positive outlook on our season would be. I thought 7 wins would be the floor. If we finish at 7 wins at this point in the season, it's a fucking failure. Sorry for all you kids in the chat. Mumtaz says, 4th and inches fooled us, but D can't be blamed. Special teams gave them a touchdown, and Zach gifted them 3 points. Once again, it was all or nothing offense. Zach is not ready. We need to give it back to Mike effing White. Yeah, look, Zach's interception was brutal. The defense did not play their best game. The offense needs to be able to pick up the damn slack when you play against one of the worst defenses in the league. This is true for Mike White. This is true for Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson did not lift us up above this team. He is partially blamed for this. The coaching staff is partially blamed for this. The loss on the defensive side of the ball is on blast for this type of loss. This is not solely on Zach Wilson by any stretch of the imagination, but his interception and his inability to get the ball down the field earlier in this game was an issue. 185 yards in the first half. That is a great first half. It really is. Finish drives. Finish the game. Defense stopped the ball. There's no reason this Lions offense should have been able to do what they did on us. They tore us apart. Pride Time B says, I honestly didn't think the Jets could stop our offense. Y'all did. You're all defense. Get my respect. I'm glad Williams didn't play, or this might have been a loss. One pride from a Lions fan. Yeah, look, I'm not going to lie. The Jets were severely hamstrung. You're talking about Quinnen Williams being out. You're talking about Corey Davis being out. You're talking about a lot of our offensive playmakers in AVT and Breece Hall. And like there's a lot of people that are not on the field for the New York Jets. But you're looking at the Lions team. This is a game the Jets should have won. There's no situation on 4th and whatever it was for the Lions on that last drive where they score a 50-yard fucking touchdown. CJ Mosley, that is entirely on you. Made the wrong read. Is what it is. John Perez. Sorry, John Perez. We're going to go to Brian Bogan first. Brian Bogan says, J.J. Watt will be half the cost of Lawson next year. Perhaps. I don't think Lawson comes back, and I think the Jets have drafted enough players to overcome the loss of Lawson. I don't think Lawson has done enough to keep his $15 million a year price tag. John Perez says, leave the Wilson thumbnail. Refs don't like us. Yeah, I know. That's my whole issue was based on the Garrett Wilson fine from last week when he got hit late out of bounds and complained about the ball and complained about the hit. Wound up getting a fine for that, which is fucking ridiculous. I'm sorry. Like, that's nuts. Dude got hit a yard out of bounds, complained about it, and got fined, and the other dude that hit him, Poyer, didn't get a fucking dollar against him. Talk about bullshit. That's a whole lot of it right there. Stifler's mom says, team lost. Zach Wilson didn't play horrible. Zach didn't play horrible. I think he did enough where we could have won if we had an outstanding defensive performance, and we just didn't have an outstanding defensive performance today. This game's not entirely on Zach Wilson. I thought Zach played an game. Look, we're talking 18 of 35. almost 50%. He did have over 300 yards for the second time. He has had 2 300-yard games where he has lost the game. This is garbage time yardage. Today, I would say not so much. 317 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception. Should have won the game. That interception was brutal. Quazier says, the way our O-line played today, Mike White would have died. Zach Wilson being able to maneuver around the pocket is impressive. It is a very important trait to have if you're Zach Wilson and if you're our Jets offense. This team lost because of our defense and because of our offense. It is an entirely team loss. It's not solely on Zach Wilson. Vinny Chiochi says the whole team was asleep for 3 quarters. Yep, completely agree. Chris KV says team loss, every single unit failed a lot. Look, special teams was bad. You had special teams giving up a punt return touchdown. You had special teams giving up I shouldn't say bad, but special teams giving up the game tying touchdown in the Zerline. A 58-yarder, it shouldn't have been that long. It shouldn't. Should he have made the kick? Yeah, look, NFL kicker should have made the 58-yard field goal. That's a bomb of a kick. Zerline's been good for the majority of this season. I don't have that much hate towards Zerline in this sort of situation. Zach doesn't throw the interception. We feel a lot better. Let's see. Not Brian Dolan. Woke Hogan. Woke Hogan says, the defense choked. It's like the Rex days. Yeah, I think the defense definitely let us down today. I definitely think that the offense didn't play up to where it could have been, but the defense allowing the Lions to drive down the field consistently, especially on that 50-yard touchdown, that's the loss. That's where it was right there. The first drive and the last drive by the Lions defense or by the Lions offense. Not okay. Brian Dolan says, Jets haven't won a game since my dad died. Brian, I love you so much. But you're right. Look, you're talking about the Lions game, the Bills game, the Vikings game. The last game your dad saw was the Bears game, and that was the one we were talking about where it's like, wow, Mike White played an impressive game. I feel bad. I'm sorry, Brian. This is not what your dad would have wanted to see. The Reptile guy says, Rex days all over again. Great coach, great team, horrible quarterback. Don't complain about don't complain about the swear words. Reminds me of Joe Beningo. Look, I don't want to curse because I know there's a lot of kids that wind up watching this post game. But when we have a game that's as frustrating as this one was, when you're going against a defense that is as bad as the defense that everyone's 5-2 Zach Wilson, if he faced the bad defense, he'd be fine. Well, guess what? He versed one of the worst defenses in the league. He got 317 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. The box score looks okay from the quarterback's perspective because they forced him to want to throw. You're talking about a quarterback who almost did not get 50% completion percentage and a running game that our top rusher did not eclipse the 25-yard mark. They forced our quarterback to throw the ball and they fucking won. That's what happened. The old gamer Joey Q says Salah blew it with timeouts. Look, it's bad, but overall, if we don't have the interception and they don't score points on that last possession and the defense holds its own, we win that game. It's a Salah issue. It's a team issue. It's a Zach issue. It's a full team issue, full team loss. KY Jets fan says, kicked out the house, my girl, for acting a fool. Look, I didn't kick out of the house because I'm starting a fire down in the fireplace right now. I have the wood pellet stove, the wood stove, trying to get some heat in the house. Becca and all the friends we had over, they're like, oh, Ryan, why are you yelling at the TV? I said, well, because my Jets, they didn't do what I asked of them. Not great. Steve Love says, defense gave up 1 touchdown, terrible timing, but 1 touchdown. The defense gave up 1 touchdown, but the defense really gave up 2 touchdowns. As much as you want to say 1 touchdown and we held them on 4th and fucking a half a yard. Well, guess what? 99 yards, that's a fucking defensive problem. As much as I want to give Zach shit for being down on the half-yard line and the punt being bad and the special teams gave up the touchdown, no, I'm sorry. That's on the defense. That is not on the special teams. You allowed them to go all the way down the field. You gave your punter less than 10 yards, maybe 10 and a half yards to punt that ball. He had to get it out of there. That's on the defense. That is not on the offense. Is not on the special teams. So as much as it is one touchdown given up, I don't buy it. Stephen Riley says coaching staff is more to blame here. Mike LaFleur is terrible offensive coordinator and worse play caller. Man, Berrios awful. Saleh not using timeouts. Zach better outside the pocket. Get him out there more, LaFleur. Yeah, when I look at Zach, I think of a very athletic specimen at quarterback, and he should be on the edge and he should be allowed to create some plays with his legs as well as some players crossing the field, make it I don't want to say dumb it down, but you're talking about a half field read compared to a full field read. And Zach should be able to make that kind of call. Now, Zach throwing the interception he threw, I mean, there's no excuse for that. I don't know how you come up with any sort of rationale for why that's a good throw. It is an absolute awful throw. It is an absolute detriment to this team. But the defense overall had themselves a way worse game than Zach Wilson did. Zach Wilson had over the 300-yard mark, had the 2 touchdowns and the interception. But you win this game if the defense holds its own against the Lions and they allowed a 50-yard touchdown to end the game. John Perez says, watch game tape. Refs missed a lot of calls. I don't want to bitch about the refs a whole lot, but especially with Garrett Wilson getting fined for the last out-of-bounds hit where it was late and he complained about it. Like, I'm sorry. There is something wrong with the NFL right now where you are allowed to just fucking deck a receiver out of bounds a yard late and the receiver gets the fine, not the defensive player. Like, that's bullshit every which way. And I don't like it. I'll be honest. Max Riggs says, it's impossible to create drives when you can't run. Yeah, look, that is a huge issue. But that is also an issue with Zach Wilson. The Lions gambled, like the Patriots did. We're going to force Zach to throw the ball. We're going to make him kill us with his arm. And it took like some very heroic, very impressive catches and plays from the offensive side of the ball to get to the point where we needed. Overall, the fact that you had less than 50 yards rushing the ball, that is an extreme issue. And our offensive line is by far one of the biggest problems. But Zach Wilson not being able to throw the ball is the bigger issue. And I think the Lions gambled on him not being able to. Dylan comes up next, says, stop with the D hate. 10 points in the whole game. I'm not hating the defense. I'm just saying the defense allowed them to go 99 yards. The punt return for a touchdown, as much as it's on the special teams unit, that is on the defense. They allowed them to go all the way down the field. The offense couldn't do anything because God forbid you get a holding penalty in the end zone. That's a safety. So they tried to not allow that. And then they give up a punt return touchdown. So the punt return team was an issue. The offense was an issue because of the interception. The offense was an issue because of the incomplete passes. You can't have 50% completion percentage against one of the worst defenses in the league. I don't care if you have 300 yards. That is a bad stat line. Wyatt Hurt says, Zach having 29 seconds to get 3 points cancels interception of 3 points. Look, the defense, I think, played their worst game today. And I think it is entirely fair to say that Zach Wilson lost in part because of their defense. I do think it's fair to say the Jets lost in part because of Zach Wilson's inability to complete a pass with yardage that was there. The interception that he threw should never have been thrown. But it is not solely on Zach Wilson. I 100% support that. That is on the entire team. If not, it's on the defense. This was their worst performance of the year. Stephen Riley says, can we bring in a legit quarterback coach? I've heard a lot of people talk about quarterback coach and talk about Kurt Warner because of the success that he thinks he could have with Zach Wilson based on the plays that he threw or did not throw against the Bills. If that's the case, I'm all for Kurt Warner coming in. I have no issue. No issue with Kurt Warner. V-Man comes in and says, Wilson was okay, but defense and clock blew it. Yeah, look, for me, this is on the defense. There's other issues. Zach Wilson did not have a clean game. There were issues from the coaching staff. The defense gave up enough where we didn't have a chance to win. Jets could have won this game. Between the quarterback and the defense, both did not have a good game. Enrique says Zach Wilson starting versus the Jags. The offense looks different with Mike White. D looked tired. The loss of Quinnen Williams was a big deal. Yeah, not having Quinnen on the offensive line and allowing Goff to have as much time as possible behind that offensive line was a detriment. And let's call a spade a spade. The Lions' offensive line is one of the top 5 offensive lines in the country. Losing Quinnen Williams was a big loss. Is Zach starting against the Jags? 100%. I would be stunned if Mike White started against the Jags because it's a short week. Mike White has broken ribs. I don't think Mike White starts another game for the Jets. I think Zach Wilson will finish out the season. I really do. Aaron Honore says, I really had to take a walk after this game. Dude, you and me both. I'm pounding a drink as I'm watching this game. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like there's so many opportunities for the Jets to win this game and for them to lose the way they lost, especially because the defense gave up the yardage they gave up the points they gave up. CJ Mosley allowed a 50-yard touchdown. Dude, you've been good for the entire season. That was a brutal season-killing completion. Stifler's mom says, I don't know. I just got the feeling Zach Wilson can get it together. Look, I've been saying for a while, Zach Wilson is the most talented quarterback on this Jets team. I think he has the highest ceiling of any quarterback on this team. I think when you look at the easy throws today, Zach Wilson was able to complete enough of them. Zach played well enough to win. The Jets defense gave up that last touchdown. That was brutal. And Zach didn't play a clean game. He had the interception. But overall, I thought we played well enough to win. And I think this team is on the outskirts of playoff contention because they do not know how to win. And I think they have far more issues than just the quarterback position. KY Jets fan says, worst loss of the season, the Lions. Why? It's a bad loss, but either one of the Patriot games or the Baltimore game or the Bengal game, any 4 of those losses were far worse. 2 losses with Zach Wilson against the Patriots and the 2 Flacco losses with the Bengals and the Ravens are far more detrimental than this loss against the Lions. This is not okay. This offense has played well enough to win. The defense has played well enough to win. Today, the defense didn't hold up their end of the bargain. 100%. Max Riggs says, I think Zach Wilson did have bad incompletions, but I think with Mike White, we still lose because we can't escape outside the horrible game the O-line had. Offensive line, let's Mike Wilson die. So the offensive line was really, really bad. There's no way for me to spin this in any sort of positive light. I would say I don't believe Mike White throws the same bad pass that Zach Wilson did, but at the same time, there's a reason why Mike White's a backup, right? Like I think there's enough to complain about overall about the Jets and where they are right now that it doesn't necessarily have to include Mike White in that conversation. There's nothing I can see from Zach Wilson. I said it over the last 4 games. There's nothing I can see from Zach Wilson that would allow me to allow him to go into next season without competition. At the very least, I want Mike White as competition. And honestly, I would love to have more competition than just that. It's not all about incompletions, but Zach Wilson could have done enough to win this game, and he didn't. The unit. The unit says, I'm sorry, Zach Wilson was throwing balls and praying he missed a wide open Berrios where nobody was in sight. You can see Garrett Wilson was done with him. Yeah, the unit. I completely agree with where you're at on this. And I think the offense in general looks at Zach Wilson and says, this guy's a liability for us. And this is someone coming from, like, I think Zach Wilson is the best physically gifted quarterback the Jets have ever had. I really do. From an arm strength perspective, from a scrambling perspective, from a, just a quarterback in the pocket, keeping the ball within the offense. Like, I think Zach Wilson's a very impressive quarterback. And unfortunately, because of where the Jets are right now and where the team looks to be, Zach Wilson has caused us at the very least 2 losses against the Patriots. But you could be talking more if you're talking this game. I don't think that this game is entirely on Zach by any stretch of the imagination. I think the defense played their worst game of the season. But you're talking about a team that is one of the worst in the league. One of the worst in the league on defense. And you can't have a great game. Like, we're talking about, like, you got to win this game convincingly. And they didn't do it. Mike White, will he be available for the Thursday game against the Jaguars? They're already saying no. They're saying, hey, look, this is a defense that is going up against an offense that should not be on the field right now because they're already, hamstrung by all these injuries. There's a lot of issues. But the Jets have the opportunity to win, and they have the opportunity to beat Mike White and to beat whatever team they're facing, and unfortunately, Zach couldn't do it. I'll say it again, Zach is not fully to blame. There's coaching staff issues, there's player issues, there's special teams issues, there's more issues than just Zach. I won't harp on him by any means, but we need to be able to win games like this. If you want to be a playoff caliber team, this is the game you win. Right now, I would be shocked if the Jets won 7 games. We're at 7 wins right now. Every single one of these last 4 games should have been considered potential wins. And guess what? Zach Wilson played horrible enough to prevent any sort of hope of a win. Blitzcrew says Zach Wilson was much better when he sets his feet. Wilson to Wilson connection was starting to make headway, but long way to go. Timeout usage was questionable. I completely agree. I do think LaFleur did not have the best time management situation. I don't think it's entirely on him because if the Jets don't throw an interception, you're not dealing with at least 3 points there, and the Jets have an opportunity to win the game. But absolutely a big issue. Max Riggs says, we win next week if Zach Wilson doesn't play in the third quarter. I have a real big issue with Zach Wilson and where this offense could potentially go based on where we think the offense can go based on, the starters and whatnot, and him having a bad game against bad players is not super encouraging. Mr. Downtown says, it was fun. It was a fun season while it lasted. Zach, Salah, and the defense cost us the win. We are fooling ourselves if we talk playoffs. It's mock draft season for us. Look, that's frustrating, and I do agree that there is blame to go around on Zach, on Salah, and of the defense. I think Zach deserves the biggest blame because of both Patriot games and because of this game. 100%. And look, you could say there's issues against the Ravens, there's issues against the Bengals, there's issues against last week's team, against the Bills, but when you're facing one of the worst teams in the league and you're facing a division opponent where, we have to hide you to try and get a win, that's on you, dude. I'm sorry. Zach Wilson has lost us more games than he has won us. I think we have won games while he is quarterback or while he is, sidelined or whatever, but I don't think we have won because of him outside of the fourth quarter of the Steeler game. V-Man says, look at the fool not blaming the D on Twitter. You don't want to blame the D in any capacity when you're the starting quarterback. And I don't know who you're talking about here in general, Vinny, but overall, not blaming the D on Twitter is fine. No issues with that whatsoever. I really think, I really think that the defense should be able to win the game without help from the young players on the defense. KY Jets fan says, we are a quarterback away and Mike and Zach aren't it. I would say White is closer to being it. Zach has a lot of hope. You're looking at how he plays the quarterback position, the running style, the arm strength, and you're saying, wow, this is really impressive. But it's not the play of a Super Bowl caliber team. And when you look at the players on this team, Joe Douglas needs to go out this offseason and say, hey, look, we got to win. We have to win this playoff spot. We have to be in contention at this point. Let's see. We got V-Man coming in. V-Man says, I sent you a screenshot of a fool. Hopefully it's not a screenshot of me, Vinny. Hopefully that's not where I'm at. Let's see. V-Man, where did you send it? Didn't send it via Instagram. Didn't send it via Twitter. Donde está? Whatever the hell you're talking about. I hate looking at my text messages and seeing like, what the hell's up with Flacco? Just yelling at the screen. That's what I'm doing. Not a good thing. I think if the Jets have Mike White, they probably win. And based on the comments that I'm getting on my phone, I can't take it anymore, says John. I'd rather see Flacco. Brutal. Brutal based on what we've seen from Flacco. I got my buddy, a Lions fan, coming in. Says, good game, man. If you had Mike White, you would have beat us. Really nice defense you have there. Yeah, Matt, you can go pound sand. I'm sorry, dude. Jets should have won that game. We lost it. Part of it was because of our coach. Part of it was because of our defense. Part of it was because of our quarterback. It's not solely on one individual player, but it is a bad, bad loss nonetheless. V-Man says, look again, I resent it. All right, V-Man, let's see. Is it on Twitter? Let's talk about it. Let's see what we got. Usually you send me stuff on Twitter. I don't have anything on Twitter. I don't have anything on Instagram. V-Man, don't even put a super chat. Just let me know where you sent it. Where did you send the comment you're making? Oh, there it goes. I got it. Apparently, I don't have you on Twitter. So on Twitter, the defense gave up one touchdown. That's not choking, says Peter Yeti. V-Man comes in and says, yes, it is. What it's in the middle of the field, you have a lead late in the game and you let a tight end run unopposed to the end zone. That's choking. Peter Yeti says, they gave up one touchdown to a team that has been tearing defenses apart for weeks. If the offense didn't suck, that one touchdown wouldn't have mattered. I agree with Peter. I agree with V-Man. I agree with both you guys. I think that is entirely accurate based on both assessments of the situation. I think the defense should not have given up a 50-yard touchdown to a tight end. That is entirely on C.J. Mosley. And I do think that the defense played well enough to be able to win if Zach Wilson doesn't throw an interception. It's a little bit of both. Vinny says, what happened to the D creating turnovers like they were at the beginning of the year? That is the biggest reason we have not been winning games. The biggest reason you don't win games is because of turnover differential, and the Jets have given away the ball more frequently than they have turned the ball over. And overall, the defense for the Jets has started to struggle a little bit in terms of taking the ball away from the opposing defense. It's a big issue. Brian Dolan says, stop blaming the defense. They're carrying the entire team. This whole team, the only time we get complimentary football is when Mike White plays. The offense shit the bed over and over again. Brian, I shouldn't say I completely agree. I would say this was their worst defensive performance. And based on some of the losses Zach Wilson had earlier in the year, we should have won those games, and this game wouldn't have been as important. But I would say Zach Wilson being unable to throw the ball allowed the Lions to really crack down on our running game, and it ended up with the Jets only having less than 50 yards total. Less than 50 yards rushing. That's on the Jets offensive line. That is on the offensive play caller. That is on the offense in general. So it's not, I don't want to put the blame entirely on the defense, but the first touchdown on the punt return, as much as it's the defense only gave X amount of yards and X amount of points, the 7 points the special teams gave up, that is on the defense because of how poorly they performed on that opening drive. Mr. Downtown says, I'm worried we are in quarterback purgatory. Who can we get? It's a tough situation, and for the last few weeks, and I would say the last probably 3 or 4 weeks, I've been in the situation where I thought that Mike White, at worst, was Jimmy Garoppolo light. And for me, I would rather re-sign Jimmy Garoppolo. Not re-sign Jimmy Garoppolo. Re-sign Mike White. You have Zach Wilson, who is under contract for the next 3 seasons. Have the two of them compete. Now, in my heart of hearts, I'm concerned because this is a defense that should win a Super Bowl. This is a team in general that should be in position to win a Super Bowl. But I think because of the inability of the quarterback on the offensive side of the ball, and because of the oopses we have made throughout the season, we've ended up in a situation where the Jets are in a really, really rough spot, and it's purely because of our own doing. KY Jets fan says, you look drunk. I certainly am. Damn Jets. I would say I'm not drunk, but I'm certainly enjoying a Bud Light Seltzer Cocktail Hour Watermelon Mojito. I get no dollars for saying that on stream. But I've had 5 or 6 beverages, and the Jets have kicked me in the nuts in every single one of them. Knifey Spoony says, left about 5 wins on the table this year. Brutal. We should have won against the Ravens. I think it was a blown defensive assignment. We did play better overall in that game. The Bengals game should have lost. Both New England games could have won if we had moderate to below average quarterback play. The Vikings and the Bills, the Vikings game, there was a lot of inches offensive performances. You're talking about Garrett Wilson barely stepping out of bounds. You're talking about Corey Davis barely getting tripped up by a defensive player on his way to a touchdown. You're talking about Mike White barely missing a wide open Garrett Wilson for a 75-yard touchdown. And then you're talking about Barrios dropping the ball. So for me, the Viking game was a big loss based on how we played. The Bills loss, not great, division rival. I think we won the first matchup because of how poorly they performed, and I think they won this matchup based on how poorly we performed. And I think it ended up exactly how a defensive matchup could end. So I would say both Patriot games and the Ravens game, those 3 alone, are easily wins if the Jets have below average quarterback play. And I would say today's loss and the Bills loss and the Vikings loss were rough and should not have happened. Oss says time management at the end was pathetic. It was at the end, but there's no situation where the Jets should have had to kick a 58-yard field goal. I'm sorry. Like, the Jets made a calculated effort to try and get down the field, and it did not work. We shouldn't have to kick a 58-yard field goal. I trust Zerline to make that kick 9 times out of 10. The fact that we were as close as we were, like, this leads me to believe that with Zach Wilson in against Chicago, we're talking about a 17-10 win, like brutal kind of win. I don't know if Zach showed me enough today to make me feel confident in any capacity. So we'll see. Even Keel says, first half, 3 rollout passes for big plays, none in the second half. Mike LaFleur is horrible offensive coordinator. Zach is not good, but this loss is on coaching. This is the closest that I have seen based on all the games I have watched. This is a total team loss based on special teams giving up a touchdown, based on defense not being able to stop the Lions' offense, and based on offense not being able to score touchdowns and having an interception. That was like brutal. There's no situation where Zach Wilson's interception is remotely thought of as a good pass. Ramani AD says, hey, Ryan, it was a collective loss. Man plus horrible punt equals 7 points. I completely agree with you on that. Besides for the defensive collapse at the end of the game, that led to 7 points. Jets defense held the Lions to 6 points. Zach played okay, but lots of hero ball. Your thoughts? The defense held them to 6 points because we got, I don't want to call it lucky, but they drove all the way down the field, down to the half-yard line on the first possession, and scored a touchdown on our punt return. For me, that first touchdown is on the defense. It's not on the offense because you have to play conservative because you don't want to have a penalty in the end zone to cause a safety. And I think when you look at the special teams, look, you got to kick it out of bounds. You got to drive the ball down the field. But when you only have 10 yards to punt the ball, like that is really tough. I was a punter in high school. I'm not claiming like any sort of like, oh, like shit's difficult for a punter, but like, when you're on your 1 yard line and you only have 10 yards to punt and you need to worry about them smacking down the ball for a safety or a touchdown, that is a very hard thing to deal with. And I'm not blaming the offense for it. I'm blaming the defense for allowing them to go 75 yards all the way down the field. That is a serious issue. Ramani says, Zach played okay, but lots of hero ball. Your thoughts? So for me, when I look at Zach, I say, look, Mike White is not going to play the rest of the season. I would be very, very surprised. They were saying 3 to 5 weeks for this rib injury. There's no way he's playing on a short week against the Jags. And if you're saying 3 to 4 weeks, there's no way he's playing against the Seahawks. Are you bringing him back for the final game of the season? I don't think so. I really don't. So for me, I'm looking at this whole situation, and I'm saying the Jets do not have their 2023 quarterback under contract for the 2023 season. So whether you believe that to be Mike White, or you believe that to be another quarterback within the NFL, or you believe that to be a rookie, I don't think the Jets have their starting quarterback under contract right now. And I really hope I'm wrong because Tua Tagovailoa, Josh Allen, both had very good third years in their rookie, campaigns. So can Zach Wilson have that same type of success going into his third season? Maybe you get an offensive playmaker. I get the feeling based on the offensive line, based on the wide receivers, and the verbiage of the coaching staff and the players that they believe in Mike White, not in Zach Wilson. So I think Zach needed to have a really great game. I think he had an okay game. I don't think it's phenomenal. I think he did good enough to win. But because we played poor enough to lose, the Jets had themselves a little bit of a hard time. Joe S. says, a Super Bowl defense makes a stop to win the game. Sure. Okay. Like, I won't argue with you on it. I really won't. when you consider their body of work on the season, I would say I don't lose faith on them overall. I think a lot of it has to do with where they currently are situated in our offense and and team in general. So, by and large, Super Bowl team needs to be able to make a stop there. You can't have a 50-yard gain by a tight end at the end of this game. So overall, let's go through some of the stats for the Jets. Zach Wilson finishes the day 18 of 35, 315 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. That's just over a 50% completion percentage. As far as rushing the ball goes, Zonovan Knight had 13 carries. That is the most by any running back by a factor of 3. Had 23 yards, no touchdowns. Michael Carter was the second running back, had 4 carries for 15 yards. Overall, between the two of them, had well under 3 yards a carry. Really not great. Garrett Wilson at least has himself in contention for an offensive rookie of the year. With Zach Wilson coming back in, I thought for sure there's no way he's going to win it because Zach's not going to be able to get on the ball. 4 receptions, 98 yards for Garrett Wilson. Jeff Smith is in second with 4 receptions, 77 yards, which I'll be honest, I thought there's no way in hell Zach should be throwing to Jeff Smith. The fact, I understand Corey Davis is out. I understand Denzel Mims is out. The fact that you have Elijah Moore, Wilson, Uzama, Conklin, Carter, and Bam Knight, those 6 guys should get looks before the Lions' defensive performance, and I think the Jets did not do a good job in that. I really do not. Let's see what else we got. Joe S says Super Bowl defense makes the stop. That's what we were talking about. Yeah, look, it's not good. Quinnen Williams was a huge loss this game. You don't have Quinnen. You don't have Corey Davis. You don't have some offensive weapons that you would have had otherwise. The Jets were in a situation where the Lions could have dropped the ball based on a high emotion win against the Vikings. And I think because it was Zach Wilson, they're like, yeah, try to beat us through the air. We don't trust him to beat us through the air. Go for it. Why not? Zach Wilson takes a ton of blame for this loss, along with our defense and offensive player performance overall. So this was a frustrating one. I don't think it's entirely on any one particular player, but Zach, the defense, and a lot of stuff overall really needs to be brought home because I think that was a serious issue. What else we got? What are you guys talking about in the chat? Let's see. Ed Stewart says, running down that sideline stuff, eventually going to get his clocked clinged. Not sure exactly what you're talking about. Balls be hurting says, if we don't go for Derek Carr, we need to re-sign Mike White and draft a quarterback and let the pick sit for the entire season. Something has to change if we want a franchise quarterback. I would love Derek Carr. Derek Carr has to waive his no-trade clause, or the Raiders have to cut him before, I believe it's February 10th when his guaranteed money clocks in. I would be very, very surprised if Carr was not the quarterback for the Raiders for next season. I would be very surprised. Max Riggs says, Zach Wilson made some super amazing throws. Jay, stop being dumb. I think he made some really good throws. I think there were some really nice opportunities. I'll have my every throw up pretty shortly. I would say there is a situation where I don't know if I trust Zach Wilson. And I think there's also a situation where the Jets should absolutely be able to perform given poor offensive outlook. And I don't think Zach Wilson has allowed them to be able to do that. Let's see. What else we got? Mumtaz comes in. Mumtaz says, there is no way Zach played well. He never lets offense have rhythm. It's always all or nothing. His double clutches cause sacks. Big throws to Jeff Smith and Michael Carter were both lucky. A 70 yards should be subtracted from his stat line. I would say Zach Wilson did not do well enough for us to win, and I would say he has the lucky opportunity to have a lot of skill position players to help his offensive production look good. And he made some nice throws. It's not a lot, but I think he made nice throws in this game. I don't think it's fair to entirely blame Zach based on how the defense played and how some of the play calling and clock management were dealt with. But Zach needs to be able to play well for us to win, and I think he clearly did not play well. So really not great. When you're looking at our wide receivers, Garrett Wilson led the way, 4 receptions, 98 yards. Jeff Smith, 4 receptions, 77 yards, which is insane for me to think about. I'm not going to lie. Like, Jeff Smith should not have that many yards based on the other offensive weapons that we have. Elijah Moore has himself the first 4 catches he had since Zach Wilson came back, I believe. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. 4 receptions, 51 yards from Elijah Moore. CJ Uzoma has 2 touchdowns, 41 yards on 2 receptions. And look, I'll be honest, I don't think he played particularly well, but I think the touchdowns were absolutely necessary. We needed them. Needed them for sure. Edward Stewart says, love Zach's deep throws. It's just the short yardage I have a problem with. Wasn't for Brees. Might be different. Yeah, that's when people are telling me 5-2 with Zach versus 1-2 with Zach or 1-2 with Mike White. Without Brees Hall, Zach Wilson is 1-3. Without Brees Hall, Mike White is 1-2. That's where we're at. 100%. And I don't think it's entirely on Brees. I don't think it's entirely on Mike. And I don't think it's entirely on Zach. I think there's a lot of blame to go on the coaching staff. And I think there's a lot of blame to go on offensive possessions without just the initial impact or whatever. A-Man Report says Jameis Winston would be an upgrade at quarterback next season. Winston would be an upgrade at quarterback, but he would also be an upgrade in terms of like turnovers. And I don't really love Winston. I think there's a lot of shitty stuff that he's done over the course of his collegiate career to now. And I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but I would rather go a different situation. Adrian says, Zach Wilson is an exciting player with a lot of upside. Yeah, Zach's got a ton of upside. I just don't think he has enough confidence in himself to make the easy throws, which would allow us to get the ball down the field and get more yardage. So I hope I'm wrong here. Austin Power says, how is Zach lucky to have Jeff Smith? Yeah, he shouldn't be lucky. Jeff Smith should not be catching starting reps in this offense. I'm sorry. Lou Salazar says, Lions had no respect for our defense by going for it on 4th down multiple times on 4th down. The Lions don't have to have respect for our defense. They just have to believe, look, there's no situation where we're making the playoffs. We're going to go after this offense consistently because we think they can't stop the run. We think they can't stop 4th downs. We think they can't stop 3rd and short. Whatever it may be. The Lions team overall has put us in a very, very tough position, and I blame that more on the Jets' defense than I do the special teams unit with LaFleur and Zach. Let's see. William Brody says, bottom line, we need a quarterback. Our defense is great. Yeah, well, that's where I'm at a crossroads. Like, does Jimmy G hit the market or do the 49ers bring him back? I think they bring him back. If he doesn't, would you pay Jimmy G $30 million versus Mike White $15 million? I wouldn't. I think Mike White's better than Garoppolo right now. When I'm looking at Derek Carr, I like scratch my head. I'm like, okay, that's not the worst situation. I don't hate Derek Carr. There's a few other opportunities I would like to see the Jets have, but Derek Carr, That's a pretty good one. Does he waive his no-trade clause to allow himself out of the contract that he tried so hard for the last 9 years for Adams to play with him? I don't know. Kevin says, get Rodgers or Brady, end of discussion. So this is something I've brought up in a few streams at this point, and I know a lot of you Jet fans are going to get really pissed off at me. But overall, I really think there is a strong likelihood that Tom Brady ends up in New York, and that is purely because he tried to cheat his way to Miami to try and beat Bill Belichick and got caught. Miami lost a first-round pick because of it. Tom Brady didn't get fined at all. Now, him going to New York as a free agent, he's no longer under contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He wants to try and beat Bill Belichick, go against a team that Belichick hates, like with all his passion. There is a situation where I want Tom to start next year. And you have Zach sit behind him, learn behind the GOAT. No problem, no trade compensation, very minimal monetary composition, and also the offensive production from this young team. I think there is enough of it where you can be concerned over the starting aspect next year across the board. So, Kevin, I do agree with you. Rodgers is a little bit more tough to figure out because he has a $100 million cap hit, which is like a $68 million additional cap hit if they cut or trade him prior to June 1st. I do think there is a realistic situation where the Jets trade Zach Wilson or trade for Aaron Rodgers just before training camp because it allows them to learn the offense while also not having to deal with the offensive hiccups that the Jets have dealt with over the course of the last few years, or at least over the last few weeks. The unit comes in, says, LOL, with Miami losing and the Patriots about to lose, we still have a shot. Man, we need Mike White back ASAP. Mike White, to me, provides the best offense for us to win. And not even just that, it's the ability to have your teammates believe in you. And I don't feel like Zach Wilson is at that point, but I feel like Mike White should be there. There is enough with that guy winning that your team's looking around saying, he might be the guy. It's important. KY Jets fan says, I'm sick of getting my heart broke by this team. I'll let you in on a little secret. I hate getting my heart broken by the Jets, but if I try to get to a position where I feel like the Jets should not win and that the offense is playing horribly, I'll go watch my daughter or whoever else is playing in that game to enjoy that game. When I'm looking at this offensive team and the production output, I'm saying we have a serious issue. The Jets need to be able to perform well against teams that have subpar talent. And the Jets have not shown any capacity to do that. So heartbroken? I'm with you, KY Jets fan. Drew says 17-3 Raiders. That is important. We need that to happen against the Patriots. We should not lose against the Lions, but at least you have an opportunity if you lose. Philip Allen says, Zach needs to be able to put up more points right now. He's nothing more than a solid backup quarterback. Yeah, when I look at Zach and I look at Mike White, both of them sort of seem like the ideal situation for a backup quarterback. And as far as starting quarterback goes, you're talking about, Mike White made these really simple throws. Zach Wilson made these more difficult throws, but he's missing on the simple throws. So, how do you weigh one of these cons versus the other? And I would argue that it makes more sense to get guys that know how to play than guys that may have to learn how to play based on how their offensive production or play calling is called. So I don't know. It's very frustrating to watch. Johnny says the run game and O-line were complete garbage. The D and the rest played fine. I would say the D did not play fine, and they are within lockstep for having a poor offensive production from the Walmart win-loss column. So it's an issue for sure. EP Jet says, Yep, I also remember Zach Wilson being 9 of 22 for 77 yards. Zach Wilson has been bad for the majority of the season. I would say this game isn't entirely on him, but you have to give him a slight bit of the blame if the Lions felt they could rush 8 against us because they didn't think Zach could throw the ball, because that's exactly what we wound up seeing. Joe Campagnon says he played 3 games and lost 2 of 11. Lost to 2 11-win teams on the road. He should have won both if Berrios doesn't drop the pass or Flacco doesn't fumble. I do agree, Joe. I do think there's enough there to be frustrated with the offensive line performance, or at least young offensive performance. Brian Z says, no way have this much talent and so few points. That's a sure sign the offensive coordinator can't call a game, because the low-scoring issue happened across 3 quarterbacks. So I get what you're saying with this. You're talking Mike White, Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson all had issues scoring points with this defense, which is factual. I would argue that with saying Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco, Josh Johnson, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder all had success in this offense other than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson seems to be the only albatross in this situation where you think that he may not be able to perform up to the level you need him to. Philip Allen says, Zach needs to be able to put up more points right now. He's nothing more than a solid backup quarterback. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's where we're at right now. You're talking about a situation where he needs to be able to throw on a Santa hat. He needs to be able to, like, holly jolly his way to fandom. But overall, the Jets and Santa and the offensive performance from this team is very, very lackluster. And I really hope that the Jets coaching staff receives some coal in their stocking based on where we are right now. All right. What else you guys talking about in here? Return of the Jedi Rusty Spooner says refs and NFL rigged this game. Also, blatantly no flags, then flag us. It's really bad. I would say there is an increasing amount of fans that feel like there's some rigged situations in the NFL. I've said it for a few years. I think there is influence from the refs to generate better games, and I think it improves the likelihood that people are going to be betting on games as well as the likelihood of teams winning. So if the Jets and the NFL want to keep their gambling partnership, they need to be able to avoid situations where the optics do not look good from a, that guy should or should not have won his matchup this week. So it's seriously an issue. Jeffrey Cox says, Lawson, Berrios, Joyner, Mosley, bring in some better talented players. Fire the offensive coordinator, friends or not. I don't believe enough that Mike White should be Mike White's offense should be fired. I think there is enough there to be able to say, oh, you can't do that. And he might be saying, oh, well, the playoffs or the situation with the team may not have been the same situation that it would have been otherwise. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Carlos says, you okay? You seem wasted. I understand this team is making me drink too. Yeah, well, I've had a few cervezas. We had a little friend's Christmas situation where I was doing my every throw as well as having all the fun that I normally have. And unfortunately, there's a few issues overall. Let's see. What else you guys talking about in here? Andrew says, the refs totally screwed us. 3 games in a row. JS love our defense, but they're always a play that kills us, and our offense got to step up. Way too many blown plays everywhere. Yeah, I think our defense let us down today, for sure. I think the offensive play calling, you can argue, was a little bit suspect. But by and large, Zach Wilson shouldn't throw an interception. The defense shouldn't allow a team to drive all the way down the field on us. And overall, I would call this a team loss more than I would call it a Zach loss. Kevin Swicker says, gun to head, who starts week 1 next year? Gun to my head, I'm saying Mike White. I really think there is a real situation where the Jets try to retain Mike White. I don't know what the contract ends up being, but if it were me, I would say it's a 2-year or a 3-year, $10 million per year deal with a team opt out after 1 year with 1 or 2 void years. So if you have a 1-year contract with Mike White, you call it a 2-year, $20 million deal where you get a $10 million cap hit in 2023 and 2024. And then you deal with some of the repercussions because of that. Now, because you're not doing that, you also have a situation where the Jets can have a, let's call it a 1st and 10 with a a punting situation, or with a defensive formation. I think the Jets have a situation where they can score points, but they need enough help from their defense and from their offensive line that I don't think they are getting right now with Zach Wilson. But we need help to keep our playoff shot alive for sure. All right. So gun to my head, I'm saying Mike White is the starter for next year. Let's go over some stats. Overall, Zach Wilson, 18 of 35, 317 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He had Zonovan Knight had 13 carries for 23 yards, 1.8 yards per carry. Michael Carter was second with 4 carries for 15 yards at 3.8 yards per carry. Our best wide receivers, our top 4, Garrett Wilson, 4 receptions, 98 yards. Jeff Smith, 4 receptions, 77 yards. Elijah Moore, 4 receptions, 51 yards. CJ Uzama, 2 receptions, 41 yards, and 2 touchdowns. When you're looking at the defensive side of the ball, Will Parks had 9 tackles. Quincy Williams had 7. Quan Alexander, 5. Jordan White had 6. Michael Carter, 5. Across the board, the Jets did not have a good game. We had no sacks of Jared Goff today. That is a serious issue. Braxton Berrios averaged 18.7 yards per kick return. Zerline averaged, he had a long of 34 yards, missed the 58-yarder in total with the extra points, had 5 points on the day. Braden Mann averaged 50 yards per kick with 1 inside the 20 on 6 punts. Ablab jumps in and says, do we need Chargers and Pats to lose so we won't slip in the standings? Yes, we need the Chargers and Patriots to lose as many games as possible. So yes, we do need them to lose 110%. Ablab, thank you so much for the donation. Guys, I'm going to cap it off here. We're going to call this a very frustrating loss for the New York Jets. There was situations where the Jets could have won. There were situations where the Jets could have held strong against a Lions defense and a Lions offense, and the Jets were unable to get it done. So, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you believe in Zach Wilson for these next 3 games? Do you think the Jets have a shot at the playoffs over these next 3 games? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.
What?